The state calls Jeffrey Lacoste.
Jeffrey Lacoste, please.
There he is. Oh, Jeff, thank you for being here. No, seriously, Jeff, I mean it. Thank you, Jeff.
My name is Jeffrey Lacasse, Jeffrey Lacasse.
Thank you, Jeff.
Well, you seem quite sincere. What's that music?
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff, thank you, Jeff.
Charlie had told her that no man wants to date a single mom. So we had this conversation repeatedly. And then I show up to dinner and Charlie's dating a single mom.
Thank you, Jeff. It's so freaking scared of that T-Rex. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff, thank you, Jeff.
An extremely contentious divorce.
Jeff, thank you, Jeff.
And Wendi Adelson drove me to Charlie Adelson's house, at which point I do recall observing that she was unusually jittery and being strange. I didn't know what to make of it at the time.
Jeff, thank you, Jeff.
She was a nervous wreck. And I actually traveled to the store to buy her, I believe, some Pepto-Bismol. She was such a nervous wreck. She was having stomach problems. So she wasn't food poisoned. She didn't have the flu. She wasn't sick. She was just so
I don't remember that.
nervous that she was having stomach problems.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
Well, yeah, you didn't go anywhere with Wendi without hearing about
No.
Dan Markel.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
I was kind of tired of being strung along.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, such awesome Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. You can bet that he has tons of s***. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. I'm so freaking grateful for my Jeff.
No further questions.
All right, we can release the witness. Okay, you're free to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm so freaking grateful for my Jeff.
Very beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
You've been great, really. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming by. Thank you, 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 thank you hate you doing this. Thank you.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, how is everybody? Let me get this off the screen. I am a little discombobulated. Is anyone else feeling the holidays? I'm just feeling this pressure from Christmas, like not ready for it. Anyone else feeling like that? So today I am going to talk about Court TV had on a panel of people that included Carl Steinbeck, the Friends of Dan Markel, Justice for Dan Markel, and Janine Driver, who's a body language expert. And she is doubling down, to use her own words, on the idea that she feels that Wendi is being 100% honest in her police interview. She was totally unaware of this plot that the rest of her family did. And I want you to think about what that would look like. The whole family gets together and decides as a present for Wendi to kill her ex-husband, Dan Markel, without the father of her children, without letting her know. So that would mean that she just accidentally drove by the crime scene, that she bought bullet bourbon. It had no meaning. It just was the kind of bourbon she bought. And they would have to be prepared for the inevitable outcome, not inevitable, a possible outcome, that it would be something that Wendi wouldn't want. So I started out talking about Christmas, and we've all given bum Christmas gifts. But can you imagine the family giving a gift like, oh, we just did this all for you, Wendi. Oh, you didn't want that? You can't return it. Can't go back in time. Can't make it not happen. And we know that there were no breaks in familiar relationships. In fact, it only made them closer. Wendi went down to Miami, moved there. And I hear she is living with Harvey now. So to my mind, that's nonsensical. I don't think you can be a passive conspirator. So even if she knew about it, but she may not have been involved in the planning, but she certainly would have had to provide the details of Dan's daily activities, his routine, where to find him. And there's a lot of sus phone calls going on. 18 minutes, she's talking to her brother about the TV. The TV, once again, it looks really bad. And I think all that would come up in a trial should Wendi ever be tried. But we have these kind of experts in true crime where we're not really sure how they inserted themselves into these cases, but they're given a whole lot of weight that I don't think they really deserve. I understand why a lawyer would be given weight, and they're often used for PR campaigns. So another thought experiment. Let's think about if you were worried about being indicted in this kind of conspiracy case. You know that it's getting lots and lots of press. You know that the court doesn't work in a vacuum. You yourself are a lawyer, or your daughter's a lawyer, and you're worried that you might be indicted. So I'm talking about obviously Harvey and Wendi, just using them as examples. What would you want to do? You'd want to change public opinion. And how do you change public opinion? Through experts, either through lawyers or body language experts. And the whole history of body language is very interesting. I'm thinking about the Lie to Me guy who got so famous studying how our expressions are universal on our faces, Paul Ekman, and how his studies have never been able to be repeated, meaning no one's ever been able to really repeat with any accuracy his techniques of lie spotting. But we want these things to exist because no one likes being lied to. Nobody likes being fooled. We like to think that there's some foolproof way that we could learn to ensure that we'd never be fooled again. Also, when you have a case that's stalled and we're at an impasse here, we're waiting for Donna to be tried. Sure, you can talk about the jailhouse calls, but boy, are they repetitive. I did 2 days of that and my head was hurting so much. I'm not sure I'm going to revisit them in any kind of great length. I might do some clips, but of something that's really shocking in them or important. but I don't know if I'll ever do another live stream for 2 hours on Charlie Adelson's jailhouse calls because it's just too trying. So you have a case that everybody's interested in that's at an impasse. You need these body language experts. They're almost like fortune tellers to come on and tell you what's going on. So enough of me talking, but certainly no one ever asks when an ex-FBI person, say, inserts themselves into the true crime cases or talks about true crime cases, why their opinion matters at all, why they're ex-FBI, and why their opinion should matter, and why the ex-FBI person doesn't respect the court's decisions, why they know better. Okay. So this was on Court TV.
Markel was a bright and talented young law professor at Florida State University in Tallahassee. He had 2 children with his wife, Wendi Adelson. But when Dan and Wendy's marriage broke up, things got very bitter, especially concerning the custody of their children. Wendi wanted to relocate 400 miles away in South Florida, where her parents, Harvey and Donna, lived and ran the family's very successful dental practice. Wendy's brother Charlie also lived there and was also a dentist. In court, Dan was winning, and the judge was not on board with Wendy's plan to move the children away from their father and away from Tallahassee. But in the end, Wendi did move to South.
Look at that shot of Wendi with the eyes, with a real intense stare. Some people would call that crazy eyes. I don't know if that's exactly crazy eyes, but it sure is intense. But I love the delivery. Was a dentist.
Florida with the children. That's because Dan was shot and killed in his driveway. It was murder for hire. Wendy's brother Charlie was sleeping with a woman named Catherine McBann.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Who was also sleeping with the father of her children, Sigfredo Garcia. Charlie paid Catherine to get Sigfredo and his friend Luis Rivera to drive from South Florida to commit the murder. All 4 have been convicted. And now Wendy's mother, Donna, has also been charged. But what about Wendi? What did she say? How did she react when she was told Dan had been shot and killed? Tonight, we go in depth analyzing the video of Wendy's first police interview. How did she react, and what about her body language? All this as we continue our investigation into the murder of law professor and loving father, Dan Markel.
I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Every time we do the story, we start it the same way, talking about Dan Markel, who's a loving father, and that's why he was murdered. That's why he was murdered. Was fighting in court to retain his right as a father to raise his children, to be there physically, emotionally, financially, in every which way. No way was he going to give it up. Went to court, went to battle. And that's why he was murdered. It's crystal clear after watching trial after trial after trial. You watch these trials, there's been 3 of them already, and that's what you take away from it. Dan Markel loved his boys, was not going to compromise, was not going to give up, and was going to fight tooth and nail to be a part of their lives. And that ended his life. Charlie Adelson was the dentist / mastermind of this murder. He's the one who put the pieces together, sleeping with a woman named Catherine McBanoa, who was sleeping with a man who was best friends with a Latin king. And Charlie cooked up the idea, or maybe came up with the idea with some help from some other family members. that the best way to solve Wendy's problem was to
Got a great comment about Charlie Adelson's defense, that someone is asked in the Over My Dead Body. This is what this commenter said. And I will go through your comments from last episode a little bit later into the episode. Said that someone in the podcast was asked what they thought might have happened, and they spout out Charlie Adelson's extortion defense exactly. And the person wrote, and I'm sorry to whoever wrote it, I'll try to clip it and show it next time, but said that I know that he wasn't that smart. Knew he had to get it from somewhere. And I think the same thing about the TV repairman alibi. And I believe there was a Matlock that had to do with, if I'm remembering right, it may be another type of show that had a TV repairman as an alibi. And that sounds about right for Donna's age.
eliminate Wendy's problem and murder his ex-brother-in-law, Dan Markel. So he paid cash, money, gifts to McBanawa, who then transferred that stuff to Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia. And they drove from South Florida up to Tallahassee and took out Dan Markel. I mean, the law professor shot and killed in a hit, a murder for hire, super clear. Charlie's been convicted. Next up, Donna Adelson, his mother. And prosecutors here, I'm sure, will argue that she was motivating Charlie to get this done, was scheming with Charlie as the perhaps co-mastermind of this murder. What is super clear from the evidence, when you watch the trial, listen to the testimony, read the text messages, listen to the phone conversations, listen to the wiretaps. What's clear is Donna Adelson wanted to win this battle and wanted her grandchildren and her daughter down in South Florida. And she was getting beaten in court by Dan Markel, who's a brilliant lawyer. Getting beaten. So looking for another way to get it done, is I'm sure what they're going to argue. I mean, it got so personal at one point. Dan Markel was trying to prevent Donna from spending time alone with his children, afraid of her poisoning their minds. It got personal. As much as Wendi had a motive, who hasn't been charged, Donna had a motive. Now she is charged. But what about Wendi? What about Wendi? What's her role in her family? What is her relationship with her brother? What did she know? When did she know it? Did she find out when police were telling her? That's what we're going to look at tonight, because we've got the video of her first police interview. And it's a doozy. We're going to analyze it, listen to the words, put them in context, look at the body language, and try to get a read on Wendi Adelson. She's been a witness in these cases, but never has been charged. Let me introduce our guests who are going to help us go through all this tonight. Joining us tonight in Alexandria, Virginia, body language expert, author of New York Times bestselling book, You Can't Lie to Me, and creator of this new free newsletter. It's called In the Driver's Seat. Janine Driver is with us. In Redwood City, California, a man who's been an incredible advocate for his friend, Dan Markel, founder of Justice for Dan, former law professor Jason Solomon is with us. And finally, in McKinney, Texas, prosecutor, defense attorney, creator of Jury Trial Mentor on YouTube, and knows this case, the evidence inside and out. Carl Steinbeck is back with us as well. Great to see everyone tonight. Thank you for being here. I want to begin and go right. This is 2:46 p.m. Wendi Adelson's police interview from July 18th, 2014. Let's watch, let's listen, and then we'll talk about it.
I just listened to my voicemail.
What'd you hear? Who was your voicemail?
It's from Lisa Carey, who is my real estate agent, or who I had gone with to find a house. She just said she was driving around town and she heard there was a shooting with Trescott.
Yeah, that's what this is about. I'm sorry you had to hear it that way.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if I should.
It's all right, just leave it there. Is it still on?
It's right there.
And you want to just hit play again for me?
Sure.
Hey, it's Lisa Carey. It is Friday, and I feel like an idiot doing this, but I just heard that there was a shooting over on Trescott, and I promise I'm not trying to be dramatic or even nosy. I don't know, just checking on you, my friend. I hope all is well. I hope your sweet boys are well, and if there's anything you need, let me know. It just ran a chill down my spine when I heard that there was something going on Trescott. All right. I will talk to you soon. Bye.
That's all right, you can stop it. Or does it stop automatically?
It's done.
Okay, do you have your identification with you? So you never took the last name of Markel?
No.
Adelson. Okay. Wendi with an I. Joe. Hi. There was a shooting at your home, or your ex-husband's home, at 2116 Trescott. Okay. Your ex-husband, Daniel, all right, has been taken to the hospital. He's not going to survive.
Oh my God.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I know that's a tremendous party. What happened?
Well, before we get into everything, I have to establish where you were and who you were with and so forth.
Okay.
Okay, and then once we've established all that, I can give you more details.
Okay.
Do you understand why I wanted you to come here before I discuss this?
No, I don't.
Can everybody hear me now? Okay. All right. I don't know why that muted me. Interesting. All right. We will try again. So what I was saying is it's like she's reaching Mariah Carey levels of octaves in that, but no tears. This is like a little bit better video. Little bit better video. This actually might be a good time to go over your comments. So this is important. It's similar. Comparing these two women is indeed interesting. In both, this is Dalia DiPolito, both cases, law enforcement sets up a fake situation to test the reaction. In both cases, this is Kenora Spellman, 4649. In both cases, the wife's reaction to the news of her husband's death is fake and unconvincing. You could add a third case, Denise Williams. So I had to think about that. Actually, I had to contact Craig and I was like, how was law enforcement fake to Wendi? What did they set up that was fake? Of course, the bump to Donna took me a minute and a half as soon as I was reading it. Jennifer 17032 says, I have no doubt Wendi knows about Dalia DiPolito's case, especially since it happened. I was having the same thought just an hour from Miami, being mindful of Dalia's case and how it went down. I think it's a good possibility that Wendi was thinking ahead, which is why she was quick to tell the detective about Charlie's joke, just in case the hitman was really a cop and Dan wasn't really dead, as was the case with Dalia. And I thought the same thing. And the reason I pulled this up is because when you hear Wendi being told that Dan Markel has been shot, she waits till the end to have her reaction. And that's one thing. Dalia bit the bullet, like did it too quickly. So he doesn't even have killed out of his mouth. And she's starting weeping. And she was criticized for that. So I wouldn't be surprised if she studied other cases, including Denise Williams. Mrs. Jim Morrison says, also, if Wendi was attending a Stock the Bar party that night, who was watching the kids? So I'm asking everybody, does anybody know she set up a babysitter for the night of the 18th? She didn't make one phone call to the babysitter to cancel. I wish the detective thought of these questions, although I'm sure Danny would have been more than happy to take them on his trip, since the court order stated he had first right of refusal. Just another time Wendi didn't comply with the order. Really good. Yeah, absolute. It's really cruel when you know that your ex-spouse wants to spend time with the kids and you're just denying him out of spite. Let's get back into Wendi's thing. Hopefully this will play all the way through. And Janine Driver will come in saying Wendi's 100% honest and authentic.
Okay. No, you have nothing to be sorry about. Can you let me get over this hump, okay? Can we do that first? All right.
Wow. Okay. Begin with you, Janine Driver. What are you seeing? What are you noticing about Wendi Adelson's reaction here to this news?
Hey, I'm going to challenge conventional group thought on other people, experts weighing in on this. I, in my expert opinion, feel that it's authentic. If you played the video a little longer, you would see her palms come out. And when her palms come out, that's sincerity, openness, nothing to hide. It doesn't mean that she might not have suspected something like this might have happened. But in my opinion, here we have that palms out. This is a very interesting thing. Unless she's read a whole bunch of detecting deception novels and been trained by you, Vinny, and myself and other experts, this is not something that naturally happens when someone's being forthright and telling the truth. And we see these palms out. This is a vulnerability thing to show our wrists and to show open palms. I like to say, just like a handshake signifies an agreement, open palms represent this unspoken agreement of honesty and openness. So I don't think she was connected with this shooting.
So it's definitely not a psychopath imitating, mirroring what a honest person would do. And Janine Driver throws out an interesting idea. Did Wendi read books on how to come off as honest and believable? Certainly I would if I wanted to get away with something like this. I would look at body language. We know police pay attention to that. Your body language. You start touching your face. You'll hear people say in a traffic stop, don't touch your face. It'll trigger the police to think that you're hiding something. But the palms have spoken. Janine says the palms have spoken. Case closed. Forget everything else you know about the case. Palms are up. I think we can close this up right here, right?
Jason Solomon, your thoughts about listening to Wendi Adelson at the moment she is told by police that Dan will not make it?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I certainly respect Janine's expertise on reading the body language and appreciate that. I think that it's really hard to say. As you know, there's a lot of evidence that could point either way. I will tell you that when I first heard about Dan's shooting, his murder, I thought that Wendi couldn't have been involved, even though I knew that the family was very much at odds with Dan, because I thought Wendi would not be that stupid. On the other hand, one would think that her family members would not be that stupid, and they were. So it's very hard to say. I think, certainly we know that she knew that her.
He makes a great point here, which is you hear all the time in true crime, why would they do this when they could have done it so much better? Had they done this or that? Why were they so dumb? Let me tell you, people are impulsive, or they sometimes don't pick the best option. Why would the whole family be so dumb and risk prison to do this? Because they were obsessed with having the final word and getting their way and getting revenge. Dan represented everything they hated. Real morals, real connection to spirituality, to Judaism. Certainly something that they rejected totally. They hated him. And I really think Wendi really wanted to see Dan in that state for her own satisfaction, sense of satisfaction. It's dark, but I think it's pretty dark inside that head of hers.
Her brother, Charlie, had looked into hiring a hitman before. And so one wonders if she knew that and she really wasn't involved, then did she not say, Charlie, my brother, my dear brother, don't you dare do anything to the father of my children. I appreciate your wanting to protect me. It doesn't seem that she said that. She's had lots of opportunities to say that she said that to her brother. She's never said that she said it. And so, that's very suspicious if she really wasn't that involved, that she wouldn't have said such a thing to her brother.
Carl Steinbeck, what are you seeing in this moment? And how do you think this moment would play inside a courtroom if she was ever charged?
Well, I think you got to look at a bigger picture of what was going on weeks and months before this, as well as what was going on that morning. Keep in mind, she drove up to the crime scene, knowing her kids spent the night there beforehand, and seeing the crime scene police tape "Do Not Cross" and multiple squad cars and evidence vans in front of the house where her kids resided. She hightailed it out of there and didn't ask a single question. And then she goes to buy some liquor and then goes to lunch. And she went a 45-minute detour to actually go there to do the crime scene inspection. And then when she gets approached at the luncheon by Detective Isom, he brings her in her squad car 20 minutes back to the police station, and she never demands to know, why am I being brought into a police car? What's going on here? I saw the squad cars all at the house. Tell me what happened to my children. Nothing was said about why she's going down to the police station. This is the first he hears about it. But then you also see some red flags of how she reacts to this. In this
Carl, why are you wasting your time on facts and possible things that might be evidence. Palms up. End of story. Did you not hear what Janine Driver just said? Palms open. End of story. So foolish of you.
First couple minutes when she's playing that phone call back from the real estate agent, she should be freaking out right there. She's not freaking out. Why is she not freaking out? Because she knew about it. So there's so many indicators that she knew what was going on. And keep in mind, this murder's been planned for over a year. Even Georgia Kappelman, the prosecutor, said she was grooming this boyfriend for 8 months right before the murder, then dumps him the week of the murder, and also wouldn't talk to Dan the week of the murder. He was trying to talk to her about the kids and this new school they're being enrolled in that she did behind his back. So there's so much subterfuge and trickery going on here. So I think also she didn't even correct him, like just little things that you pick up on. Like she didn't even correct him on the correct pronunciation of Markel. The Detective Eichsum called it Markel. It's not Markel, it's Markel. So the fact that she didn't correct that, and then if you tie in other things she did afterwards, like months later, she's changing the names of the two boys from Markel to her last name, Adelson, and even the middle name. So there's just so many indicators here that she was totally involved.
One thing that you mentioned I find interesting, and this is something I'd like to learn a little bit more about, the timing and everything else. When she goes to this scene or by the scene, close to the scene, sees crime scene tape up, knows where she is, and knows her kids were there the night before. I'm wondering if at that moment you would pick up the phone to make sure the kids are okay. I don't know. Here's what I do know, though. Janine Driver, Jason Solomon, Carl Steinbeck are staying with us this hour. And when we come back, we've got more of this interview, more pieces. It's a fascinating look and a fascinating study on something that could be evidence for her or against her if she's ever.
Right. What are they going to have Janine Driver come into court and say palms up for the defense? But you can hire these kind of experts if you want a PR campaign. I'm not saying that this is a fact. I'm just speculating. Isn't it interesting that Janine Driver seems to have every other popular opinion in true crime, and she has such an unpopular opinion in this case? She goes with the herd on almost every single case, but this case? What's going on? And we're going to look at her background in just a second.
For charged. Also, coming up next hour. In Moscow, Idaho, the accused Idaho student's murderer loses in court again. Meanwhile,
I don't think he'll be the same. Okay, but he might make it.
I don't want to give you that false hope.
I'm sorry. I just thought he was
okay.
gone, and now I don't know what to tell. It's sort of a game changer.
This is, I really don't understand what's happening here. It seemed like she.
It's sort of a game changer if he might be alive, and he might be able to point the finger at my family or me. Of course, I have to pretend to be totally excited and ask that he be kept alive, and that's what he would want. I'm so curious if any of Danny's friends heard that Danny wanted to be kept alive by any means necessary. That's what Wendi tells the victim's advocate, Sarah, in her police interview.
She was told he's not going to make it, and then presuming that he's dead, and now this advocate is telling her something different. A little bit of like, what's going on here in the information that she's getting. Our guests are still with us, Janine Driver, Jason Solomon, Carl Steinbeck. As we continue to watch this police interview, let's go back in now. Now it's 4:40 p.m. And here the officer is talking to Wendi about what has happened to Dan. Let's watch.
Is he still alive?
Clinically, he's not going to live.
What does that mean?
He has a severe, yes, he has a severe brain injury.
So much shot in the head.
It's apparently there's too much damage to recover from it. Okay, that's why we need to get a hold of his family. Right.
Who does that mask-like face? So she's screwing up her face, and it just stays that way. As she's asking questions, it's like a pain face, and she just puts it on and kind of keeps it on. Who does that in real life? It's so unusual, at least to my eye. Let me know what you think.
I don't know what his I don't know if he has an advance directive or what he would have wanted. He once told me that he would want we joked, I said I would want to be like, if I was ever, I have an advance directive. I do this kind of work. I run a medical legal partnership. Like if I once said if I ever was like brain dead, I would want to be like, I'd want the plug pulled. Right. And he said he would want all efforts made. Like he would be cryogenically frozen.
Not for nothing, but look at Carl's face. It's just it's so deadpan. He's not buying any of this. Janine Driver's got the pencil. She's doing her body language calculations. And of course, Justice for Dan. Is his name Justin? Jason? Let me know in the comments. He's just I think it's Jason Solomon. He's kind of sitting back from it because he's a little bit repulsed by it. And Janine Driver sitting there with her pencil. But it's just Carl's face so deadpan. It's kind of cracking me up.
Like he wanted every single effort that could be made to keep him alive. I know that much.
My understanding, and that's what we'll have to get a hold of the family as soon as possible, but my understanding is there's irreparable damage. There's nothing that can be done. I mean, I'm not there, I wasn't there, but I understand from previous cases that the brain, his brain is damaged beyond repair. There's nothing that can be done for that.
Is he still alive? Should I bring the kids to see him?
No. He has severe facial injury.
No, Wendi, no one thinks that's a good idea. And yet you'll press on. You'll press on with this suggestion that the kids see their father in this state. Unreal.
I'm sorry, and I know this is tough, but I would not want my children to see.
Okay, I just thought I got this inkling that maybe he was still somewhat conscious, and I wanted him to get to be with them. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that, but that's the way it is. Like I said, there's severe injury, trauma.
Okay.
All right.
Is there someone is there a doctor working on him, or are they just?
There's doctors at the trauma bay, the ER. I think he's been transferred to ICU.
Okay.
All right, and they'll have to make a determination about organs.
Oh my God.
And so forth.
Oh.
Okay, Janine, this is difficult stuff to watch, but could be evidence if she's ever charged. What are your thoughts about what she is saying, how she's reacting here? Give me your assessment.
With all due respect to everybody here, I'm doubling down on I believe. Now, listen, this is suspicious behavior we talked about earlier. Doesn't mean she doesn't suspect her brother wasn't involved. My youngest sister, was married to a guy who was a batterer. And he was arrested for trying to kill her and their daughter. He gets out. She sees a car go down the street. She's at my parents' house. She thinks that this is her ex-husband in a rental car. But it takes her 20 minutes to call me, who's up the street at a friend's house, and it takes her 45 minutes to call the police. That makes no sense. Why would she wait 45 minutes? Why? Because she suspected it. We do stupid things. We're in fear. I'm not saying she doesn't think her brother was involved, her family was involved. I don't think she was directly involved. Tiffany Hartley, I don't know if you remember this, you at home and Vinny. In 2010, Tiffany Hartley, her husband David gets shot by pirates out in Mexico in the water. No one believed her in the detecting deception world. I came out, I said, she's telling the truth, and here's why. Sometimes the truth doesn't look the way we expect it to look. This emotion right here, in my expert opinion, trained the FBI, the CIA for 20 years, this is authentic sadness. She's telling them, keep him alive. And I know that might be suspicious that she's offering this evidence before it's asked, but she's saying, is there anything we can do to keep him alive? One last thing I want to say is she is asked, and we don't hear it here, would you ask someone to do this? Would you have asked someone to kill someone? And instead of saying no, she says, not in a million years. That is a weak denial. I can see why people think she's probably directly linked. I think she has her suspicions. I think she knew it was her family. I do not think she is directly linked to this murder.
Okay, I have watched this episode no less than 5 times, and I still cannot put together what happened, was it her sister-in-law? Was it her friend? What the story is surrounding Janine Driver and was it her ex-husband? Was it her husband was planning on, all I know is some husband or ex-husband was planning on killing someone that Janine Driver knew or didn't know. I mean, either knew like it was in her family or a friend. And the reason that she looked so suspicious is because she was suspicious of her husband or ex-husband. So we have something happened to Janine Driver's either family member or extended family member or a friend, case closed there. And now she says that the truth sometimes doesn't look like what we think it would look like, which she's only disparaging her entire field, saying sometimes these body language things don't apply. These body language rules don't apply. And she was right about a case in 2010. So she's right about this. And I think this is a good time to look at Janine Driver's background a little bit. She's been described as working for the FBI, the CIA, and it's being used in bios. But and kudos to her for putting this up on her website, her actual resume. So what it says on her actual resume is up on her website. So good for her for putting this up. Very few of these people do put up their resume. Or sometimes they'll say like, who is that guy? Shaker. His last name is like, hey, Shakers, that body language expert who talks about true crime on YouTube. Gosh, I don't really know his name, but he will say that he has training in this area and you can go to his resume. But when you do, it's just like, I went to college for things totally unrelated, for like business or something. Nothing about his background shows any training in this area. So I think we'll go from the back. So what it says is generally on her website is that she worked as a federal law enforcement officer working for the federal agency. So, and that federal agency, you can see here, it starts with a long association. I think I went too far. Hold on. Starts in 1999 with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And she was a public information officer. She moved up to program manager, field supervisor. And so how does the FBI come into this? I don't know if you could see it. Did I just pass it? I think I did. Hold on. Let me go backwards. It's right in here. In 1998, after the Brady Act was passed, she was giving speeches, it sounds like, or presentations to the FBI about how what the Brady Act is, the Brady Bill is all about. So she can finesse it with what she says she did under these titles, but That's quite different than, say, working for the profiling department. And John Douglas has his profiles of, say, the West Memphis Three. Like he says in that none of them had a criminal history when all of them had a criminal history. So he starts on a false premise and it goes downhill from there. And he's been used by the West Memphis Three and Amanda Knox to push their innocence campaigns. So even people who have real experience in this can be wrong, can be very, very wrong. And people have also complained, this is just more in the category of rumors. She's on the ripoff report. 2 people have complained about her, saying in 2009, I was invited to attend a Joel Bauer weekend event in Los Angeles, California. Because of this, I was told that I could go to a private one-day event held at this one-day training event held by David Lackney. I was told that he will bring his close friend on stage, Janine Driver. Well, Janine went through a great pitch all about body language and said that we could get her DVDs of her information for a few $100s. Do you know how much it costs to copy a DVD? It's like 5 cents, 10 cents, maybe $1 at most. She showed videos of her on the Today Show and how they endorsed her, as well as the History Channel. She also offered a $15,000 private apprentice program to the audience as well. I asked David about how much he knew about Janine. Anyway, so it goes on, and they said that she had to make a decision there and then. That was Janine's assistant, Tracy Allen. Oh, actually, let me just read this part. Well, I talked to Tracy's partner, Janine's partner, Tracy Allen, and was told that I was interested in the apprentice program, and told that she writes, was told that I was. So she told Tracy that she was interested in the apprentice program. She said I had to make a decision there or I would not be able to join. That is a tactic of cults, of con men. It's really sus. If anybody says you have to make a decision on the spot and doesn't allow you to think about it, you should walk away right there. I said I had to ask my husband and do some more research. She was very rude and said that if I had to ask my husband for something like this, then I wasn't the kind of person they were looking for. And it goes on. She never got her CDs. And then there's another person saying, I attended Janine Driver's seminar in August 2009 in Washington, D.C. at the 16th Street Center. The first hour of this event was spent in small groups with people who had attended the first part event, describing what they had learned. The lessons were very basic. If someone is not facing you, belly button pointed outward, they are not interested in your conversation. Pretty basic and terribly boring. I left after the first hour, and another person saying they got finally. So this original woman who I was reading, who wanted to pay $15,000 to be an apprentice, bought the DVDs, she said, for a couple $1,000s. Am I right? Am I remembering that correctly? It's either like a couple hundred. It was some crazy price. She said there was someone there who never got anything and paid $15,000. I don't know if that's true or not, but she did eventually get a refund for whatever they were asking for the DVDs, which was a high price. So take that with a grain of salt. But she is used by these programs like the Today Show, because when case has no motion, nothing's going on, they can come on and give you insights. Almost, it's kind of out of desperation to just talk about the story. What else are you going to talk about? Someone hasn't been charged yet. Okay, back to her brilliant palms up insights here.
Jason, what did you think of this part where she is talking about not pulling the plug and trying to keep him alive?
Well, first of all, I'll say, you know, I've never seen this part of the interview before, and as a friend of Dan's, it was hard to watch, thinking about him being in the hospital there. I will say that I think that these could be authentic emotions. I'm not an expert, as Janine is. These could be authentic emotions, whether or not she was involved in the murder, right? So I think that, you know, they were in the middle of a bad divorce. I think she also loved him till the day he died. She probably also hated him for the past, you know, year or however, more than that before. But she also loved him. They were married. I saw them together. Like, they were a great couple in the first few years. People know how marriages can deteriorate. And so it could be true that she was involved in planning the murder. And when it actually happened, and she's told that he shot in the head, and they're talking about him being brain dead, that she is having legitimately very upset emotions that this is happening to the person who she was in love with. So, and the father of her children. So I think both things could actually be true.
Carl, I'm thinking if a jury sees this, you know, I think some jurors, and you know, in our newsroom, we've got a split. I don't know if it's an even split, but there's people feeling both ways on this. I think a jury could look at this and say she looks like she's genuinely impacted.
Well, she also had emotions tied to this because she was having a huge impact on what was going to happen weeks down the road from this, because she was facing contempt proceedings where she was accused of taking $500,000 in assets and not disclosing it on her divorce affidavit. Her husband, ex-husband, Dan Markel, had all the clout at the school. She was only hired because of him, not because of her. In an emotion he raised in March, a few months earlier, he was saying her behavior in this divorce proceeding showed that she was unfit, or at least was questionably fit to be teaching law students how to practice law when she was engaging in this type of erratic behavior, according to Dan. So she was in a pressure cooker here. So some of these tears might have been this tears of relief that she's not going to have to face this judge that had already just slammed the door shut on her trying to get the kids to be brought permanently down to Miami area. So she has a lot of emotion on the line here. And it is somewhat upsetting to know somebody's died now that you maybe had a part of it. And this guy's questioning you. And I noticed every time he was asking her questions that could be indicative of him, like maybe not believing her, then she would start to turn on the waterworks again. So you got to look at all
the waterworks. I don't see any actual tears. Are there actual tears? It's such bad quality. You can't see it, right? I think she's nervous. She's going to get caught. She's using that real nervousness that she might not walk out of there a free woman. She could be arrested. That's the end of her law career. Should she get indicted and successfully prosecuted, that's the end of her law career there. I mean, this is a high emotion situation. But obviously I'm forgetting palms up. Palms up, end of story. End of story. Case closed. Forget everything else you know about the case. Her palms are up, and she wanted Dan Markel to be kept alive at any means necessary, using any means necessary. Case closed. No one would ever think what would an innocent person do and try to emulate that.
all the evidence, not just this little snapshot, to really see how this thing worked out. And keep in mind, this thing was many months in the planning. And in fact, she was down with her parents for 2 weeks before the week Dan got murdered. So this could have been all been rehearsed. They could have like war gamed it. easily could have been done to make it look like this and to make people think that she's sounding innocent.
Now, when we come back,
Sorry, it's getting a little bit glitchy for me. I don't know if it was for you. I'm going to try it again. Just get back into it. But I find this stuff so infuriating. This panel would have been just so good just with Jason and Carl. There's no need to have Janine Driver on at all. But she certainly does provoke a lot of emotion, at least in me.
Wendi actually names Charlie during this interview. We'll show you how that goes.
We are moving closer to
Where hiring a hitman to kill Dan Markel?
No.
I'm going to turn your attention to your law enforcement interview, and I'm referring to page 25, lines 13 through 15. Quote, "It was always his joke. He said, I looked into hiring a hitman, and it was cheaper to get you this TV." Is that what he said?
That was a joke that he made, yes.
And hiring the hitman, that was to kill Dan Markel, right? That was the joke.
That was the joke that he made in poor taste, yes.
Not to kill someone else.
No. Well, he never used his name.
Okay. Well, he's hiring you the TV because it's cheaper as a divorce present than a hitman. Who else would he be hitting with the hitman?
I never really thought about it because it was not a thing that he meant. He just made a bad joke.
He joked about hiring a hitman, and then a hitman was hired to commit the murder. I mean, that's what happened. Janine Driver, Jason Solomon, Carl Steinbeck still with us. We're watching Wendi Adelson's interview on July 18th. Let's take a look here. This is at 3:08 p.m. Now they're talking about Charlie, who has been convicted of being the mastermind here.
Would you ever ask someone to do something like this?
Not in a million years.
Okay. Do you think someone would do this for your benefit without asking you?
No.
What good does it serve?
I mean,
Well, it serves a lot of good. It gives my family something to all rally around and do, makes us closer. We win. It gives us a feeling of winning. It preserves my career and my reputation. And it lets me move to Miami and gives my mother unfettered access to my children. That's what good it serves.
my brother, the one, his name is Charlie, the one I'm really close to, he makes a lot of jokes in bad taste, and it was a joke he made. He bought the TV for me this morning that got broken, and I was talking to him about whether it made sense to pay to fix it or whether I should get a new one, and it was always his joke that, like, he knew Danny treated me badly, and it was always his joke. He said, I looked into hiring a hitman, and it was cheaper to get you this TV, so instead I got you this TV. I mean, he would never. He's my big brother, and he's been taking care of me since I was little, but he would never. And I told that to the repair guy this morning.
Right. That's okay.
I said, he asked me how much it cost, and I said I didn't know because it was a gift, because my brother said it's cheaper than a hitman. It was my divorce present.
Okay.
Such a horrible thing to say. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
But even my family, who felt like I had been mistreated, would never do something like this. Never.
Well, you guys have been divorced for over a year. Has there been any type of abuse in that time?
Of him towards me?
Yeah.
No. It's, he's litigious, and we have an ongoing case because the house, it shouldn't be in my name anymore, but when we when we settled the case of our divorce, he said, one of the agreements the court said was Danny wanted to stay in the house. They said, you can have the house, but you need to pay her half of the amount of what the house is worth. And he agreed to it. And then months passed and he just never paid me. And so we have ongoing litigation where I filed a motion in the court to have him pay me what he said he would, and he filed a counter motion for sanctions against my attorney because he thought that she did something wrong, which she didn't. But so, I mean...
Isn't it funny that everybody gets these wrong impressions? So Jeffrey Lacasse was under the impression that she was cheating when Wendi says she was absolutely not cheating. And Dan Markel was under the impression that she hid assets and she didn't hide assets and that her lawyer was complicit in that. But her lawyer didn't do anything wrong. Isn't it strange how these accusations are all around lawyers? Isn't it interesting that the lawyers around the Adelson family could be perceived as being morally vapid or running a little fast and loose with the rules?
She withdrew from the case and was going to serve as a witness. I mean, she's not going to lash out at him for it. She's using the legal process to do it. My parents are, very angry towards him. But even when they're around my kids, they would never say a bad word about my kid's father. They're really, really careful about that. They just like him, but they know he's the father of my kids. They would never do that.
Right.
I don't know who would be angry enough with him.
Well, that's what I have to find out.
To do something like this.
The brother that you're real close to, I have to do a lot of elimination at the same time. The brother that you're really...
So Janine Driver is saying that this was all done for Wendi's benefit and she walked into this interview just not knowing anything, saying and acting so bizarrely to everyone else who watches this, finds this bizarre, except for the maybe 1% of the true crime audience that thinks she's innocent and she didn't know. Janine Driver really thinks that Charlie just went rogue with the rest of the family. Come on. It's so hard to believe that she actually believes any of these things.
close to, the one that joked about the TV and everything. What'd you say his name was?
Charlie.
Charlie, and he's in Fort Lauderdale?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me what kind of car he has.
He has like 5 cars. He drives I think one of them is an unmarked police car.
Oh, really?
He's a bit of a character.
Okay.
So I don't know what he's driving at the time.
Right.
But I'll tell you, he's a periodontist, and he has this practice where he works from early in the morning till late at night. So if you ever wanted to find his whereabouts, he's working all day long until...
And isn't it interesting that this was one of Charlie's talking points in his defense, that he worked too hard to be involved in this crime? And here Wendi is making the same exact talking points. She's introducing these talking points, that he's too hardworking. He wouldn't have time to plot a murder. That's what she wants you. That's the conclusion she wants everyone to come to.
Early in the morning till late at night, always driving to a different office, working.
Oh, he goes to different offices?
Yeah, he works in different offices all over South Florida, does implants for people. And he works really hard all the time. He has a girlfriend, so he's pretty much accounted for all the time.
Charlie, what's his first name?
Charlie's his first name.
Not Charles?
I think Charles is his legal name. No one calls him that.
What's his last name?
Adelson.
What's his middle?
J-A-Y.
Same spelling, Adelson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my god.
What?
What? Oh my gosh. I can't believe this is happening.
Okay, Janine, give me your analysis here because they're talking about Charlie. Charlie was convicted by the jury.
Yeah, a whole bunch of stuff is happening here. Let's talk when she talks about the parents. She says they dislike him, but she doesn't say disliked. So I believe she doesn't want to believe that her parents are involved. If in fact she was a part of this whole thing, she would have to be the dumbest person to be helping plan this, to then offer up Charlie on a silver platter if she thought that he did it. Listen, she's either the best actress, in my expert opinion. Quite frankly, if Jussie Smollett and Amber Heard had her acting skills, then they would have never been busted. They're actors and they couldn't fake it. So from my expert opinion, again, I'm tripling down.
Don't get me started. I wonder if she's read Justice Nichols' opinion in the UK case, which really so much evidence was thrown out. The civil suit between them. But she's going to get those two popular opinions. Obviously, you can go back to my Amber Heard, Johnny Depp videos to hear my unpopular opinion on that. And Jussie Smollett to prop up her own opinion that she has to be the dumbest person in the world. She's too smart to do this. This is like one of these logical fallacies of true crime. The other one, I would say, is appealed to experts, to these experts. There's nothing in her background that makes her a behavioral expert.
Down here, Vinny, and for you at home, I believe it's authentic. We do see her laughing a little bit here. Sometimes when people laugh, it's embarrassment. When her mouth pulls back, right here, we see this a couple times. That's fear. And the last one I want to mention is the forehead activity. We have a lot of activity happening here. This is a very valuable sign of just of someone telling the truth under stress because it's connected to the brain. And I already mentioned this, the palms out. We see this consistently with her. Delia DiPolito hired a hitman to kill her husband a couple of years back. And I've heard other experts talk about this. Listen, look at the two. You'll see a huge difference. This is authenticity. Delia DiPolito, it's a total different game here.
Jason Solomon,
Really? Because I just spent almost, I would say, an hour and 45 minutes yesterday comparing those two, and there weren't all that many differences. Delia DiPolito is just not as educated, and she's not as sly and sneaky. But here you'll see the argument being made that Wendi is trying to do what an innocent person would do. Had they been brought in this kind of situation.
Relationship between Wendi and Charlie is interesting. The way she describes him and the way she describes their relationship, the big brother and everything else. But she's throwing the name out there.
It's always been, I think, a big puzzle, as Janine alluded to, of if she was really involved, why did she throw the name Charlie out there? Now, her boyfriend, Jeff Lacasse, testified at the last trial that she had a habit of sort of blurting out things that were in her self-interest. And so the theory would be that she essentially blurted out Charlie's name as someone who may be involved. I shouldn't say blurted out his name. She actively pointed the finger at Charlie, both in this interview and in the week leading up to it when she told Lacasse that Charlie had seriously looked into hiring a hitman, and when she told the TV repairman that morning about this joke that it looked into hiring a hitman. So if she was involved.
Jason, are you not considering the fact that Wendi's palms are up? Forget about the fact that she told Jeffrey Lacasse that her brother looked into hiring a hitman. Palms were up. And end of story. It's also a shortcut to thinking, isn't it? And the thing about body language also is it's very contingent on baselines and getting a baseline. because people are so different in their body movements and their body language.
Involved. The theory is that she basically was saying Charlie's name to protect herself and to make people think that she wasn't involved, because exactly as Janine said, if she was involved, why would she point the finger at her loving older brother who is protecting her? I also liked her description of her brother as being a bit of a character.
Yeah.
It's kind of an understatement.
A little bit of an understatement.
I like that too. The eccentric periodontist. I got a kick out of that too.
Dave, I didn't realize he also had an unmarked police car. Carl, what'd you think of this and this whole issue of Wendi and Charlie, Charlie and Wendi, this relationship and the joke?
Yeah, I think she was really startled because if you go back to her driving by the crime scene, then taking off when she sees all the law enforcement activity outside the house, then she goes to get some liquor, and keep in mind this is 40 minutes out of the way from her house from where the luncheon is. So she goes to meet some friends that are lunch that are in North Tallahassee, closer to where she lives. And you're just sitting down and eating. All of a sudden law enforcement shows up, and she should have been freaking out and asking about why you're here. And she never does that, but she gets that back to the police station. I think she's really freaking out because she's thinking that they're really targeting her and they're really scrutinizing her activity when she didn't. I don't think she thought that would be coming that fast, that quick. And I also agree with the behavioral expert from this morning that said all this hyperventilation talk of her is a fight or flight type response. And that's only indicative of somebody that's lying and nervous about their guilt.
Let's watch one more piece. This is a short clip where she's talking about what should happen to the killer.
Well, let me ask you.
I would argue that, like Dalia DiPolito, she's putting on that fake breathing. I know everyone's heard me say this before, but she's trying to imitate the kind of broken breathing you get when you really are upset. You can't fake hysterical crying without it. That it's too hard to do for any extended period of time.
If you found out that this was someone that you personally know, would that change your mind about what should happen to that person?
About what should happen to that person?
For prosecution purposes.
No.
Is there any way that you would think
somebody tried to kill my ex-husband, they should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
Regardless of who it is.
I mean, it would be different if I thought it were my brother, but I don't think it was my family. Anyone outside my immediate family, that's a tough one. Okay. But I don't think my immediate family did this. So if it's anybody else, yeah.
Okay. Would you think that this guy, Charlie, would even be capable of doing something like this?
No.
Let's just talk.
He's the Joker.
Okay. All right.
First of all, I love the questions being asked by the investigator. I think it's interesting and a little different. What'd you make of this last part, Janine?
My book, You Can't Lie to Me, I talk about that very important question right there, because most people who are telling the truth and are not involved, we say you should be prosecuted by the fullest extent of the law. I like that she does the disclaimer. Listen, unless it was my family, then no, then that would be a tough call. Again, I think that she's telling the truth here. I've heard other people say that she had a planned answer to this question. I don't believe it was planned. I think it was authentic. Again, the pausing, the cadence, everything to me comes across as truth.
Jason, what did you think of this question? It was a really interesting question.
So the one thing that Janine thinks is a little sus is more along the lines of something a statement analyst would pick out, which is her weak denial when she's asked, did you do this? And would you have done this? And she said, not in a million years. Would I have done something like this? I'm not even sure what the question was. It was some question implicating her.
Question that the investigator asked.
It is an interesting question. It's strange that she would say, except for my family. I understand that Janine's point that it may be that that's an indicator that it's authentic. I think one question is, and, maybe we'll get to talking about this, but, we're talking a lot, of course, about what Wendi thought and Wendi did then. And I think we also have to start focusing on what Wendi is doing and what she should be doing now. So right now, it's very clear. Right then it was not clear that her family was all involved. Now it's clear to everyone around her, everyone around the world, that her family did this. Charlie's convicted. Her mom, Donna, is in jail. She ain't going anywhere. She's going to be convicted eventually. What is Donna saying? What is Wendi saying to her friends, to people she interacts with, to her boys?
Did you guys catch that though? Jason made such an interesting point. Why is she so quick to forgive her family? Sure, she didn't like Dan Markel. She was in a contentious divorce. But either way, he was the father of her children, still is the father of her children. Why wouldn't she be angry and want them to be prosecuted? I can understand if she wouldn't want a long sentence. But why is she so sure that she wants them to evade justice? Great point, Jason. Never thought of that.
About what she thinks about whether her family is involved. This right now is her only chance to save her relationships with her boys for the long term, whether she's going to come clean, be honest with them, be honest with everyone around her, and start to distance herself from these people, start to distance herself from her family, unless there's a reason why she can't do that. Unless there's a reason why she can't do that. But right now, she's got to start thinking about her future.
Okay, so that is Court TV's exploration of Wendi Adelson's police interview. And my apologies to the society page for not giving them full credit. It's listed, of course, in the description of this video, but for their fantastic opening video. Thank you, Jeff. And boy, is that funny. It's so interesting to hear Wendi describe Charlie as eccentric. When not eccentric, she says he's, what did she say? It's like quite the character. Quite the character. Is that the euphemism of the year? He's quite the character. All his tours of South America for the purpose of having relations with children. It makes him a real character. And he used to drive a police car. Is that her trying to angle with some sort of camaraderie with the police? What's going on there? So much going on in that interview. I think someone commented that you can watch it. You have to watch it up to 5 times before you get the full effect. And I'm probably beyond my 5th viewing. I'm going to take a quickie break. When I get back from the break, we are going to look at Dan Markel's divorce lawyer. Gives a fascinating interview to Anjanette Levy, Law and Crime. We're going to take a look at that. Don't go anywhere. If you are enjoying this episode of my True Crime Report, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share this episode. Get access to exclusive podcasts and other bonus content by becoming a patron today. If you have a question or comment for me, shoot me a super chat and I'll do my best to answer it and read it on air. Thanks so much. Now back to the show. So the title of this video is, of course, Charlie Adelson's sister will likely be arrested now that mom is in custody, and it's Dan Markel's lawyer. I skip past Anjanette Levy's wrap up of the case and we can go right into the interview.
Boys baptized in the Catholic Church. Dan Markel was a devout Jew. Joining me to discuss Wendi Adelson, Dan Markel, and their divorce is somebody who knows it frontwards and backwards. He is Stephen Webster. He's a partner in Webster and Baptiste, and he represented Dan Markel in his divorce from Wendi Adelson. So welcome to Crime Fix, Stephen. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Stephen, on a scale of 1 to 10, how contentious was this divorce? We already know it was bad.
I hate to use 10. You know, you kind of set that out there as never to be used, but it was a 10. It was hot, and it was about to get hotter. I mean, that was the whole reason why I got involved, is because Dan realized he was going to have a trial, and it was going to be contested, heavily contested.
But what were the major issues here? We already know that child custody.
Does everybody remember Stephen Webster's testimony? It's so touching. He wasn't a divorce attorney, didn't specialize in this, but he took it on because so many lawyers wouldn't. And he thought he could learn from Dan Markel. He really liked him. It's a very touching testimony. I've been meaning to cover it.
The relocation, Wendi wanted to move down to Miami with the boys. Dan wasn't having it. I think all parents can understand that you want your children close to you. But aside from that, what were the major issues?
Well, at that point, by the time Dan had reached out to me, the child relocation issue was dead. It was dead. I had no concerns about that. The real thing was Dan had not paid some money to Wendi that was part of the dissolution agreement that was owed, and some attorney's fees. But he didn't pay those monies because he had realized and learned that Wendi had withheld assets that she didn't disclose on her financial disclosures. So there was a monetary component of the fight that was going to go back and forth. And Danny was alleging that Wendi had committed fraud on the court, essentially. But the real main issue for Dan was parental alienation. He heard Donna Adelson refer to him as stupid on a Skype call when she was summoning the children to the call. She said stupid's on the phone, and he heard that.
Isn't it odd that Donna, of all the insults, if you wanted to insult Dan Markel, of all the things I know about him, maybe you would say religious zealot, snobby, insufferable, but stupid is one thing. He was not. If by everybody's account, he had a high IQ. Stephen Webster testified that he was much smarter than he was.
And he was very upset about that. That was really where the battle line was drawn for Dan.
Yeah, because these are his boys, you know, the apples of his eyes. And whether or not you're getting divorced or not, you know, I remember my parents were divorced, and they made sure, though, that they never spoke ill of one another in front of us. And, you know, they tried their hardest not to do that. So that is very bad. I mean, I can understand why he would be concerned about that.
This family is so childish. And that's one thing Jeffrey Lacoste picked up on with Wendi, that a more mature person would say, I have maybe 10 more years, a little bit more than 10 more years to spend in Tallahassee. I'll make the best of it. I'll enjoy my boys. I'll enjoy my friends that are in this area. And as soon as I can live wherever I want for the rest of my life. And I can vacation where I want. And I can even maybe one day have a house somewhere else and commute back and forth, or whatever you want to do. Obviously, it's limited with the boys in school. But her parents seem to share that same kind of immaturity. And, excuse me, certainly Charlie is so arrested in his development. He's really like a teenager. doesn't do well in school, needs to help from his parents to graduate school, needs the constant reinforcement of his mother and the approval of his mother. He's never gone beyond that stage where you say, this is who I am, whether my parents approve of it or not. It's I feel, a really crucial stage in your development as an adult, saying, I'm going to make the choices that are good for me, regardless if my parents approve or not. But Harvey, with this obsession with revenge and getting over, it's really like childish at its core, among other things.
So was Donna having an influence and an impact on the boys that he could see? Was she turning them against him at that point?
I don't think he saw that yet, but he was certainly convinced that that's where she wanted to go. I think when she didn't get her way of relocating the children, I think her plan B was just to try to destroy the relationship to the point where it was almost that Dan would just kind of relent. And Dan was not going to have that. That was a fight he was going to fight.
Do you feel that Wendi was on board with that? We've seen the emails where, Donna has this plan of action. She's calling him gibbers. She's saying, tell him you're going to get the kids baptized in the Catholic Church. They're going to Catholic school. Take pictures of them in front of a Catholic church. Did you feel that Wendi was like, yeah, let's go, let's do this? Or do you think it was Donna just pushing all of this?
My sense at the time was that it was more Donna. I still kind of feel that way, but Wendi went along with it. She certainly didn't stand up and stick up for Dan. She did not like Dan at all. She hated him. I mean, she put that in messages that she hated Dan. So, gibbers was certainly a derogatory moniker that she had assigned to Dan and that she used regularly. She had him stored on her phone that way. Wendi, I saw her testify at the last trial, and she tried to suggest that there really was no ongoing animosity between the parties, and it's ludicrous and totally false and fabricated testimony.
In Wendi Adelson.
Yeah, you wonder what Janine Driver would say about Wendy's bizarre testimony, where she denies that their divorce was even that intense and that she loved Tallahassee.
Since police interview, you saw she was asked whether anyone would hurt Dan, and she told them that joke that Charlie made about the TV and the hitman. This is Stephen Webster's take on that.
It's really interesting now. Looking at it now, I almost wonder if that wasn't somewhat of a insurance policy for Wendi. That if it went sideways and if the truth came out, that she would be able to hide behind that and say, look, I wouldn't have pointed the finger at Charlie right away if I was involved in it. I was just genuinely trying to help the police figure out who did it. But I know Charlie, he seems to have a lot of animosity towards Wendi at this point, if you listen to his jail phone calls. And I'm sure that's part of it.
Prosecutors say she's an unindicted co-conspirator, as is her father, Harvey.
Right, because the prosecutors don't understand that her palms were up. They don't understand the intricacies of body language the way Janine Driver does, obviously, and foolishly made Wendi an unindicted co-conspirator. But great point by Stephen Webster that's exactly how I see it. He calls it an insurance policy. I'd call it her imagining of what an innocent person would say. Why would I throw all that out there? When I love my own family, I've already said that if this were my own family, it would be different.
For all we know, there could be sealed indictments sitting around somewhere. Do you think that eventually the prosecution, do you think they're just going one by one, just kind of dismantling the conspiracy, like knocking kind of one pin down at a time? Or what is your feeling and your thought on that? You're in Tallahassee, you travel in these legal circles, you've been attached to this case for so long. So do you believe she will be indicted?
I do, more so now than ever.
Why?
I just get a sense that the strategy that the state attorney's office has employed has worked. And there are major fissures now in their house, their defense. Charlie being sentenced to life, Donna in the Leon County Jail, like you said, Wendi identified as an unindicted co-conspirator. And I feel as though that there is going to be additional arrests made. And I'm not sure if it's both or one or the other, but I do believe there are more arrests coming.
Wendi Adelson has always maintained that she and her family had nothing to do with Dan Markel's murder. Do you think that arrest of Wendi, if it indeed happens, do you believe that it will come after Donna Adelson's trial or before? I mean, I'm sure they can do more than one thing at a time. I mean, it's the same case, basically the same evidence with I'm sure some differences here and there.
That was my belief when Donna was first arrested, but I'm starting to lean towards the possibility that momentum is picking up faster. The search warrants that have recently been served, we don't know what they were for, but we know that they got electronic devices from Donna. All of the jail phone calls, it just feels as though there is real momentum right now in this case. And I think it's a distinct possibility that the state makes another arrest before Donna's trial. And there are more than one defendant sitting at that table.
And that's something I asked Carl about in one of his lives, if they could be tried together, because I'd love to hear someone talk about what that would look like. But Stephen Webster says he thinks they are going to be tried together. Same jury, different juries. Love to know how that would go down, or how what a lawyer's take would be on how that would go down. But he's in Tallahassee, so he's obviously picking up on the vibe in Tallahassee. It's my Christmas wish that Wendi get indicted for this crime. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but we certainly know Donna held on to that cell phone. And my experience from looking at cases is that people get very comfortable on text message, and they forget that all their text messages can be looked at and recovered. And we know that they asked for electronic devices going back to 2012. Do they exist? Were they gotten rid of? What's available and what's on them is going to be so interesting. We also know Georgia Kappelman has said that there is evidence that the public hasn't seen. Does that apply to Wendi or just Donna? And Donna's defense is going to be, after creating the biggest piece of evidence against herself, which is her fleeing, is going to be, once I saw, actually, I'll do it in the Donna voice. Wait, hold on. Let me get it in the hysterical Donna voice. Charlie, once I saw you get wrongfully convicted, it was horrible. It was so horrible. I had to flee. I had to buy those one-way tickets to Vietnam for Harvey and myself. There's no justice in Tallahassee. The people are stupid. They're stupid. My cat's starting to come thinking something's wrong with me. But yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. But yeah, that's going to be her defense, is that she saw that there was no justice to be had, and she was just avoiding being wrongfully convicted. She had to escape. Watch that be her defense.
Really? So you think there's a possibility that Donna and Wendi could be tried together?
I do. I think it's a possibility. I didn't believe that 2 weeks ago, but I just get the sense that with what's happening, with the momentum that's picking up, with the search warrants, with the electronic devices, with the phone calls, the release of the phone calls, with Donna being where she's at, that their whole earth is shaking underneath their feet right now. And the state has worked this perfectly. up to this point. They've utilized each trial to kind of call out some more information, pull some more information out. Wendi is locked in to some really bad testimony. Her testimony at the subsequent trials where she had use and derivative use immunity, that's not going to be used. But unless she gets on the stand and says something different, then they can use it to impeach her. But her original statement to law enforcement was that she drove up to the crime scene. That's in evidence that can be used against her. That was not obtained under any grant of immunity. So that testimony is damning, and she can try to spin it any way she wants. That was my comfortable route. That's the way I like to go. But nobody in Tallahassee is going to buy that. No juror in Tallahassee is going to buy it.
Even though Charlie Adelson is maintaining his innocence, and this is all just a big misunderstanding, and yeah, it looks weird. It looks crazy, and I can see how you would think this, but it's not what happened. Nobody was hiring hitmen. We didn't do this. This was double extortion. Do you see a world in which he said on the jail calls, all I ever wanted was to be a dad? And we hear this sweet little child on these jail calls. It's horrible. His son. Is there a world in
Anjanette Levy? You know what's horrible? What happened to Dan Markel and what the Markel family is going through. And yes, it's sad that Charlie had a son who's going to be abandoned, not grow up without a father. But his father participated in a murder of a beloved, very important person. Why is she doing this? Oh, it just really irritates me.
In which he flips because he hopes to get out of jail someday to be with his son?
It doesn't seem likely to me. He is so arrogant that even as difficult as prison will be, and in the finality of it, realizing that his life is over, as he said in the jail phone call, certainly life as he knew it. I just don't believe that Charlie will ever humble himself enough to come out and say, you were right all along. Everything you said about me was correct. And I really am this terrible guy that did these terrible things. So that's why, to me, he's almost trying to continue to convince himself and his mom and anybody that'll listen that he's innocent, because it's kind of the only thing he can hang on to from the perspective of his ego. So I don't think he'll flip.
Yeah, I agree with Steve. I agree. Absolutely. And also, Donna is all tied up in it. So unless Donna dies, and also, what is the state going to offer him? What advantage, unless they don't have enough evidence against Wendi, they want a slam dunk conviction there. It's a little bit more difficult with Wendi and Harvey. They want his testimony after he took the stand and lied. And what do they want to give it? They really want to give him a shorter prison sentence? And I wonder how the Markel family would feel about that. I wouldn't think they would be too pleased. So no, I really don't think that's possible. And I don't see what Charlie said on his jailhouse calls as him throwing Wendi under the bus. I see it as him commiserating with his mother about how about how Wendi, I always do that, how Wendi ruined their perfect plot. If Wendi hadn't driven by the crime scene, no one would be suspicious. If Wendi hadn't bought that bullet bourbon, what are the chances she would drive by? Tip them all off. Forget his part. Forget Katie and all that. And the fact that the shooters got arrested fairly quickly. Took a little while, but fairly quickly in the grand scheme of this story. Everything he does is perfect. You have to get into the psychology of the people, of the players involved, and not put your own psychology or hear something that you want to hear. What he's saying is, why did Wendi drive by? Because she couldn't help herself. And she loves the feeling of danger of doing it, admitting it and saying, come catch me, come prove it. I'm a lawyer, come prove it. I did it, but you can't prove it. And we all saw her on the stand saying, I'll never be indicted, defiantly. I'll never be indicted for this crime. She loves to think that. It's what she tells herself. But she loves that she was involved and that everyone else is going down and she's still standing. Ditto her father. But I don't think she cares whether her father's standing or not. This is a everyone out for themselves family. Don't forget, Donna and Harvey were willing to flee and let their son rot in prison as long as they escaped. It's everyone out for themselves.
I want you to tell me about Dan Markel. I mean, what did you think of him? And tell us about him. I mean, we've heard from his mother about him, but you are another lawyer. And I've heard from a lot of people that he was a genius. He was a brilliant legal mind.
He was. And that was kind of a given before I met him. But what my real takeaway from Dan was my first takeaway was he wasn't a bitter, angry guy. In spite of all of the animosity and acrimony between him and Wendi and the divorce, he really was affable and kind of easygoing, with the exception of the comments that he heard Donna when she referred to him as stupid on the Skype calls. He showed some fire on that, but he was really an easygoing, likable person. He was funny. But what the real main thing with Dan, and it was before his murder, I was amazed at what kind of father he was. And he genuinely made me look at the role I play as a father to my children and rethink it. And that's true. I'm not saying that just because I'm on a podcast here 10 years later. He would go to have lunch with his boys at daycare, take lunch to them. If he was spending time with them and I called, he would not take my calls. He wouldn't lose a second with his boys when he had that precious time. And it's really kind of eerie now looking back that he almost sensed something that his time might be short with his boys, because he literally treasured those seconds as if he knew. I'd never seen anything like it. And still to this day, I haven't. I have never seen a father like Dan Markel.
Well said. Stephen Webster, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great interview with Stephen Webster. Very much making a lot of the same points he made in his testimony about Dan Markel as a father, but throwing out the idea that Wendi may be arrested soon. I would think soon means after the new year, in those beginning months of the year. But you wonder what is on those devices and what evidence that they have that we haven't already seen. Just going to conclude with a victim impact statement from, one second, from Karen Cyphers. You may be familiar with her. She's done great work with the Justice for Dan campaign. Justice Wheeler, I write to share the impact of Dan Markel's life and murder on me. His children and mine are the same age, and we would attend the same Tallahassee Jewish community events. If there was something to celebrate, Dan was there with Benjamin and Lincoln. He brought an infectious energy for observing the passages of life, fully present in mind and spirit. He showed up in joyful moments and times of sorrow, modeling for his sons and for the rest of us too what it means to live a life oriented towards reverence, thoughtfulness, and justice. And while he did so, a woman he had never met, Catherine McBanoa, was quietly plotting how to kill him. I observed the unmistakable value his life brought to the community he chose and have seen the devastation his murder delivered just the same. I witnessed up close the heartbreaking grief of some of those closest to him whose sense of loss is profound and lasting. There is a missing space where Dan, Benjamin, and Lincoln once joined in. Dan had so much left to create and give. Unaccountable lives have been forever changed for this selfish, terrible act. Respectfully, Karen Cyphers. Thanks so much for listening, guys. I'm off tomorrow, but I will be back Saturday with another live stream. Have a great night, everybody, and I'll see you back Saturday.